I'll be reading from the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verses 1 through 8. Let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those who are in prison, as though you were in prison with them. Those who are being tortured, as though you yourselves were being tortured. Let marriage be in honor by all. Let the marriage bed be kept undefiled, for God will judge fornicators and adulterers. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So we can say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can anyone do to me? Remember your leaders, those who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. The word of God for the people of God. Praise be to God. May be seated.
So it's always interesting how the different versions lay it out just a little differently, the story. And in the Common English version, it begins with, love each other like family. Now, if you're like me, that may conjure up like an image of an afternoon, movie or something like that. An idyllic setting where, families are dancing through the daisies and the sun is always shining. And it's just so wonderful as they dance away into the sunset, right? And it's true that sometimes we can have those experiences. I grew up in a pretty good family that was supportive and loved me and showed love. Certainly more often than not. But the truth is not every family is like that. Not every family is built around this core of love. And unfortunately, there can be more fear and more hurt than there is love. And I believe that when Jesus is talking to his disciples and we hear this message to love each other like family, it's often a little bit of a mix with the good and the bad, isn't it? There are good times where it's easy and we're sitting around the table and we're sharing a meal and we're sharing wonderful memories and wonderful stories. And there are other times when we're scared. We're frightened. We're angry. We just don't want to be there. We prefer to be any place but there. And Jesus says, in these times, we still love each other. Because we are bound together by God's love, Jesus calls us and God calls us to love one another in the good and in the bad. It's not easy. It's certainly not easy. And even the best of circumstances. I sort of think about family vacations, right? It's the time when we want to go and spend this great quality time together and spend time having fun and having new experiences, going to the beach or going to the mountains or wherever we go. And oftentimes we end up trying to cram so much fun into the event that it's just not fun. Right? We often experience in my world back on the river working with NOC, we would oftentimes see, especially towards the end of this month, families coming in and it's the last chance and by golly, we're going to be together, we're going to be a family, we're going to have fun. They might throw a couple other words in there too that I will refrain from using from the pulpit. But they're pretty insistent about it, we'll say. And so it's in those cases, too, that sometimes we have to, with a grain of salt, love each other like family. Sometimes family is the hardest to love. One of the things that I have appreciated most is in my being a pastor is being able to spend time in relationship trying to help other people work on being successful in their loving. I guess is the way I like to put it. Oftentimes it tends to be in premarital counseling. Sometimes it's postmarital counseling. Sometimes it's low stress. Sometimes it's in a very stressful situation. But trying to layer love into all these situations. One of the resources that I found to be really amazing is this Gary Chapman book, The 5 Love Languages. Now, and some of you are pretty familiar with this, and some maybe not so much. But I stumbled on this. Actually, a couple that I was doing some premarital counseling for suggested, they said, hey, some friends of ours are using this, they just love it. I went, okay, I'll check it out. And so since that, and that was the first couple that I did counseling with, since then I've used this book. Because it's brilliant. It's brilliant in a lot of different ways. Okay, so as Christians, we think about living the golden rule, right? So what's the golden rule? Yeah, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a great thing, right? We definitely want to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. We want to love others as we would want to have them love us. But I think that the brilliance of this book is he kind of twists it a little bit. He kind of takes that and takes it to the next level. You see, not all of us give and receive love in quite the same way. And so what Dr. Chapman has done is he's taken this idea of love and kind of developed it into categories as to how we understand love, how we receive love and give love to each other. And so what he does is he starts off and talks about words of affirmation. That's a good thing, right? We want to say nice things. Oh, thank you for washing the dishes. Thank you for mowing the grass. Thank you for doing this. Boy, I sure couldn't have done that myself. To give these words of affirmation to somebody else who we are intimately connected with, right? Whoever they are. And the second one is quality time. No matter what it is, just spend quality time together. Usually it's having fun. But it might also be in a work situation. As long as that connection, that relationship is being built and grown in that time. Another one is giving and receiving of gifts. I think this is a pretty common one to us. Almost birthdays and anniversaries and holidays. We like to give little or sometimes big gifts to each other. To celebrate our love for each other, right? And we do that at all kind of levels. At friendship levels, at family levels, at couple levels. That's one of the ways that we like to express love. Is through the giving and receiving of gifts. But also through acts of service, right? Through taking out the garbage, through maybe washing the dishes. Through other things that maybe that person that you're with, they just don't want to do it. And so what you do is you take it on out of love. And then the last category that he uses is physical touch. It might be a hug. It might be even more intimate touch than that. But some people are really driven by physical touch. And that's important to them. Whereas others, not so much so. But you can see how if we have all these different ways to give and receive love, if one person's way, their most important way to receive love, that they understand love at its deepest level, is maybe through quality time, maybe taking the trash out isn't going to ring their bell. Not that that's a bad thing. But what is their love language? And so as families, we try to learn each other's love language. Jesus calls us to share in this love language, in God's love language, with everybody. Sometimes it's a little tougher in the family, but Jesus also goes beyond that, right? And says, you know what? You got to love everybody. I would say he even takes it a step further and says, you got to love the person that you would be least likely to want to love. A classic example, I think, is the Good Samaritan. We're used to hearing that story and hearing the Good Samaritan. Almost like raising an Ebenezer. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, well, okay, we just sing the song. But the Good Samaritans must be good, right? Because it's the Good Samaritan. They must be cool. But if you think about it, the person that was talking to Jesus, a religious leader of his day, was talking to Jesus and said, well, who's my neighbor? If I'm supposed to love my neighbor, who is my neighbor? Jesus looked him square in the eye and told him the story that chose the person to love is the least likely person that this guy would want to love. In his day, in his own circumstance, he chose a Samaritan. Any Jewish religious leader worth his salt hated, despised, Samaritans, right? So who did Jesus say to love? The person that this religious leader felt was the least likely to be loved. And Jesus said, love that person. Love that person with everything you've got. It's not easy. It might even be dangerous following this Jesus character. But it is love. And that is love sometimes, right? If we see Jesus also coming up and as he comes into a town, a lot of times we see him meeting a leper on the outskirts of town. Now, the lepers were on the outskirts of town for good reason. I mean, quite honestly, because if they had been in the community, leprosy is a communicable disease. That means it just would spread across the whole community, and then everybody would have leprosy. Now, to give you, if you haven't really looked into it, what leprosy, it can manifest in different ways. It might be a rash, like an industrial strength rash, or it might go so far as to breaking down the muscles and the tissues in your body, and even degrading the nervous tissues in the body so that somebody would not be able to walk, that they would not be able to feel their legs at all, and even would lose fingers and hands and arms and feet and legs. You see somebody like that, you're going to put them outside of town, right? And so here they are, standing or sitting probably outside of town doing the best they can. follows Jesus. Now, if you're a person with good sense, where do you walk on the street? If this person's sitting right there, where are you walking? Over there, and you're walking, you might throw a couple bucks over their way and say, dude, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. And then you get into town as quick as you can. But what did Jesus do? He stopped. He talked with them. He showed them love. He healed them body, mind, and spirit. And then what did he do? He sent them to the priest, right? Because this person was truly an outcast. This person couldn't experience love in any way. Not only did they suffer physically, but they couldn't even have this relationship with their family, with their friends in town, because they were outside. And so Jesus, the first thing he would do after they were healed is say, go show yourself to the priest. Because what did that do? It healed them in community. It healed them in a way so that they could experience God's love through other people around them. That they might come to know God's love through their neighbor, through their family, through their friends that they haven't been able to spend time with in a long time. That they might be restored in body, mind, and spirit, but in community, in relationship. For you, who is that leper? Who is that Samaritan? Who is the one that you would be least likely to love? Jesus says, love them anyway. This is how we offer radical hospitality. You talk about radical hospitality, Jesus had it. More than anybody else has ever had it. This hospitality of acceptance so that people might see themselves and value themselves and know that they are loved by God to their very core. Jesus did that. And then he said, you go and do likewise. And so that's what we're called to do, right? We're called to love each other like family. The cool kids and the lepers. The ones that we're close to and the despised Samaritans. Love each other like family. It's what we're called to do in this world. No matter who that person is. Whether they're coming to us in fear or whether they're coming to us in love. Whether they're saying hateful things or loving things. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's really, really hard. That's not to say that Jesus doesn't want us to protect ourselves. That Jesus doesn't want us to be in a place where we experience God's love. But he tells us to love people anyway and always. Jesus constantly brought light into the darkness. He calls us to bring light into the dark areas of our world. How can we do that? Jesus says, I will never love, or I will never forsake or abandon you. I will never leave you. Paul said it this way in a prayer to the Ephesians. This is why I kneel before the Father. Every ethnic group in heaven or on earth is recognized by him. I ask that he will strengthen you in your inner selves from the riches of his glory through the Spirit. I ask that Christ will live in your hearts through faith. As a result of having strong roots in love, I ask that you'll have the power to grasp love's width and length, height and depth, together with all believers. I ask that you'll know the love of Christ that is beyond knowledge, so that you, every one of you, will be filled entirely with the fullness of God. How awesome would that be if we were filled with the fullness of God's love? So full that it poured out on everyone, everywhere around us. What if we loved like that? Amen.